LBC News.
Let's catch up with this story, a cyber attack on the public Wi-Fi at some of the biggest railway stations in the country, 11 of them in London, along with Manchester's Piccadilly and Birmingham New Street. After the hack, the homepage says, "We love you, Europe," and contains some information about terror attacks. So I guess the question is, what's going on here? Let's see if Graham Stewart can help us. He's head of public sector at Checkpoint Software Technologies, and we're on a phone call together right now. What do you expect has been going on in this case, Graham?
Hi, and thanks for having me. There's a couple of things going on here. So this is part of a trend we're seeing across the industry where the bad guys, cyber attackers, that whatever you want to call them, are going after infrastructure, critical national infrastructure. So they're going to go after the energy companies, the banks, people like that. So going after publicly available Wi-Fi is kind of part of that trend. You would call it marginally less serious than going after an energy supplier or a hospital or something like that. But it's definitely a nuisance, and it's certainly part of a wider trend that we're seeing.
Does it necessarily mean that my own data might be at risk because the hacker is responding to my request to use its Wi-Fi?
So public Wi-Fi, as a general rule, is nowhere near as secure as your Wi-Fi at home or your Wi-Fi at work. It's by its very nature an open platform. So by all means use it, but use it with caution. So if you're going to use it, make sure whatever you're doing over it is encrypted. So most banking applications are very well encrypted. There's messaging applications that are very well encrypted. Those of you, I was in London yesterday. I came in by train. I used the Wi-Fi on the train, but I used something called VPN, a virtual private network, which is software provided by the likes of Checkpoint and other companies that allows you to connect on a public Wi-Fi connection, but make sure it creates a little sort of secret tunnel through the network. The problem with going on public Wi-Fi is by its very nature, it's public. So you need to be super careful about what you do and how you do it when you're using those connections. It's
interesting that some people may have VPN available to them, might they, through some other subscription. Even your broadband supplier might give it to you, but you may not have sort of availed yourself of it. I mean, I've got a password manager called Dashlane, and they do it. So, I mean, it's worth checking these things. The trouble is, it's another bit of grit in the oyster. It's another faff, Graham, isn't it? And we're so used to convenient lives that we don't want the faff.
I would say that it's a faff in the same way that wearing a seatbelt is a faff. So, I can remember, my parents' generation, well, we don't use seatbelts, don't need to use seatbelts.
Yes, and how quickly we changed, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it is, you might view it as a faff, but wearing a seatbelt is also a faff, apparently. But if you're, our generation and younger, wearing a seatbelt is just something you do. Using public Wi-Fi is fundamentally unsafe, and you need to make sure you're protecting yourself when you use it. It's a perfectly good tool. You just need to be a bit more careful.
Let me just share with you a Network Rail spokesperson who said this. We're currently dealing with a cybersecurity incident affecting the public Wi-Fi at Network Rail's managed stations. British Transport Police are investigating the incident. This service is provided via a third party and has been suspended while an investigation is underway. Now, that's all very sensible. Now, Graham, while I've got you, there is quite a good drama up on the BBC at the minute, which is depicting a thing called Night Sleeper, which basically says there's some kind of hack going on where the bad guys take control of the entire rail network and take control of a train. Can you reassure me, don't ruin the end of the drama, but is that likely, or is that going to stay a drama for the foreseeable?
Let's just say that there's a fair amount of artistic license being deployed there.
That's a relief.
And you're not to worry. Your trains are safe.
The trains are safe, but public Wi-Fi definitely needs the seatbelt of a VPN. Nice
Correct.
Image. OK, good stuff. Graham, thank you very much indeed. Head of Public Sector at Checkpoint Software Technologies. Right, the latest on this system, with the latest on the ceasefire aspirations. So as I came to work this morning, the talk was of real optimism that some kind of ceasefire, some kind of halt to the fighting over the northern border, the border between Lebanon and Israel, was going to be achievable. Clearly that political talk, as New York went to sleep, And the reality on the ground is something completely different. The fighting is continuing there. And we've had, in the last half hour or so, statements from Prime Minister Netanyahu's office back in Israel, because he himself has now arrived in New York there, suggesting that, no, far from this, the instruction to the Israeli armed forces, the IDF and others, is to keep going. So do not expect a ceasefire. It is unlikely to take place, and indeed some of